Long haul trucking, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the mechanized loom, the modern day computer, and beer. What do all these seemingly unrelated topics have to do with one another? Well, you just have to listen to my conversation with our final guest of season one and my brilliant friend, Andrew Johnstone. Hold on to your fedora because we'll be weaving them all together in this special episode of Blue Collar, White Coat. You're listening to Blue Collar White Coat, the only podcast bringing you the real stories behind the people powering science. Well, hello and happy holidays. I'm your host, Amy Weldon, science communicator and champion of the unglamorous jobs in STEM. And why is this episode special, you ask? Well, it's not holidays themed. It just happens to be when I'm recording this episode and when it'll be released. But it's the final episode in season one. We did it, gang. We made it to the end. And by we, I mean I did. Whew. And it's a crossover episode, which I'm super excited about. Andrew, our guest, is not only a professional archivist and associate professor, but a podcaster himself and the host of a hilarious history show called Seemingly Unrelated. Whether you are a self-professed history buff or the kid who fell asleep in history class, you're going to enjoy the hell out of the way Andrew relates everyday ideas and objects to historical events. Before we jump in, I want to say thank you. Yeah, you. I started this little venture back in summer, and I'm thrilled to say that at the time of this recording, and according to my analytics, we have about 650 downloads for the episodes for season one. And I'm not actually sure what that means, but from what I understand, it's pretty good for a brand new podcast. So let's all take a second and pat ourselves on the back for that one. And not just that, but we have listeners not only here in the US where we're based, but also in the UK, Canada, France, India, Mexico, Hong Kong, Australia, Brazil, Nigeria, Egypt, and more. So, wow, that's amazing. Hi. Also, according to these analytics, you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, through your web browser, through Amazon Music, and about 15 other platforms, so that's wild too. Okay, this is kind of turning into some version of Blue Collar White Coat Wrapped, but truly, it's all just so special to me, and I appreciate every single one of you. This season is ending, but we're just getting started, so I hope you'll each tell a friend about us, and better yet, leave us with a review, and make sure you're subscribed to the show on whichever of those platforms I just mentioned. Right. I think that's enough walking down memory lane for right now. I'm just really proud of myself for getting this season done and out into the world. Maybe it's something about the holidays season, but I'm so grateful to all of you, and I kind of wish that we could all just hang out at a pub or something. Speaking of the pub, let's get to the episode. Without further ado, please enjoy this final episode of Blue Collar White Coat Season 1 and special crossover episode featuring seemingly unrelated host and my friend, Andrew Johnstone. All right, well, Dr. Andrew Johnstone, friend, colleague, high school fellow alumni, welcome to Blue Collar White Coat.
Thanks for having me on the show, Amy. I love it.
I'm super excited that you're here. I did a guest spot on your show, which
Yes.
tell us a little bit about it. What do you got going on over there in the UK?
Yeah, Seemingly Unrelated is the name of my podcast, which is all about the sort of unexpected stories behind everyday objects or ideas or events as told through their history. So we pick something really commonplace that you wouldn't think has either a history or B, a really interesting story, like pet hamsters, for example. And then we go deep. Where do they come from? What's their sort of story? And in that particular case, we end up talking about the invasion of Italy during the Second World War, because it turns out the reason we have pet hamsters is because we invaded Italy in the Second World War, which is a weird thing to think about. So every fortnight, we say bi-weekly. By the way, in Britain, we say fortnightly, which means every other week. We put out an episode, and the one we had you on came out on the 25th of November, and is all about nutrition labels and what they have to do with an undertaker for King George IV.
Yeah, I love it so much. Your show is truly one that I listen to on a regular basis because I just never know where it's going, and I always learn something, and I always cackle out loud just because you guys are so funny. And you're right now you have different guests come on, like myself, obviously, with different kinds of expertise, but it's not usually the expertise related maybe to what you're going to be talking about. So that person really has no idea. I had no idea where it was going to go, which was
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah, and I want folks to be curious and I want them to be interested. But if they're not familiar with the topic, then that opens that kind of person up to being more questioning and engaging. And we tend to then uncover even more interesting stuff that I didn't even put together until we're sitting down. So, like, I have a script, but there's always something that comes out of an episode that I wasn't at all ready for. And so then I get to play a lovely game of can I Google without people knowing it?
And to your point about like having experts on that aren't necessarily experts in what you're going to be talking about, that's a great segue because something that I've been talking about with guests on this show is how everybody's an expert. It's just in different things. Yes,
Yes.
you have a PhD. I have a master's degree. If you plunked us down into the middle of nowhere, we would be toast. Like I'm not an expert in
Yeah.
wilderness survival. If you
Correct.
gave me a riveting gun and told me to put something together with, I would hurt myself. Like everybody is an expert in something. It's just not maybe that's the point. We need experts in all the things. And so that's what we're going to talk about today too, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. I identified in my house a leak and then I picked the phone up and I called someone who knows what the hell they're doing.
YouTube can only get you so far. We went to high school together in super rural Maryland,
Right.
and we were in band together. We were in
We
a
sat
couple
next to each
classes.
other. We played the
That's true.
trumpet.
That's
At
true.
least in
That's
middle
right.
school we did.
Yeah, then
Yes.
you went to low brass.
Yes,
Yeah.
then I played the tuba. We did not have a
The two.
sousaphone. Even though we were in a marching
That's true.
band, I had to
Yeah.
carry a tuba one-handed over my right shoulder.
Like a contra, but it wasn't a contra. It was for those experts on brass
Mhm.
instruments out there. Yeah, and that thing had seen some things. It had some mileage on it from what
That
I
was an
remember.
old tuba. I had the oldest tuba of the 4 tuba players, which is a shocking number of tuba players for the size of our band.
It's true. It's true.
But yeah, I had the oldest one, and it was definitely like, yeah,
Maybe
I'm
that's
like,
where your love of fixing things came from.
I was like, I think this one met Sousa. Like, this one knows what was going on.
It's funny because you had contacted me when I was at uni in the UK at University of Edinburgh because your brother was going to come over and he now also lives in Scotland, which is amazing. And other than that, like we hadn't really kept in touch. And then lo and behold, you are a podcaster. I was getting into podcasting and that's how we reconnected. And it's amazing how many people that I already know that can relate to this kind of outlook on the fact that blue collar work, skilled trades work, really props up science and STEM in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so, I guess that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and we're gonna kind of model it after your show. So this is gonna be fun. So talk a little bit about your background then. What makes you qualified to be on Blue Collar White Coat?
So yeah, I, like you said, grew up in rural Maryland where I first sort of, I would say, I was still a kid, but closer to a grown-up job was actually at the local hospital where I actually did a rotation through the technicians. So I was in radiology with a tech for a bit. I was in cardiology with the testing and phlebotomy at one point in time. Did not take anyone's blood, thank God.
Mm,
And a few other sort of parts of the hospital where there wasn't the doctors. These are the people who did the actual diagnostic work and handed it off to a doctor. And what always struck me as interesting, there's a real value in being the person who does the actual brick and mortar work.
mhm.
That if you're a doctor, you're supposed to be doing diagnoses, but you can't do diagnoses without diagnostics. So then when I went to university, I made sure to keep myself connected to some sort of work. So I was like an apprentice mechanic for a few years at the University of Maryland. Luckily, had a very robust transit system there. And I went on to be for a brief while, maybe like in total a year if you collect it all the time. I was a long haul truck driver, which
I
was,
didn't know that.
yeah, a really fucking difficult job. Shout out to truck drivers because I've
Mm.
done 18-wheelers and I've done straight trucks. I've done the whole gamut. Um, I've done doubles and triples, all of
Wow.
it. And I got to tell you, it wears at you
Yeah.
so much.
And it's kind of a
You d-
thankless job as well. People want their Amazon
Absolutely.
package. People want their milk, their fresh milk or whatever, but like they don't often speaking from myself, I don't often think about how it got on the shelf or into my shopping cart, you know.
I think a lot of people think that it is just driving,
Mm.
which is extremely limiting to think about. And also, I'd like to see more people drive 70 hours in a week. If you think it's just driving, you're like, but I drive to work every day. I could
No.
drive it. Hun, you're not ready. You're not ready for 10-hour shift, sleep for 8 hours, wake up 10-hour shift. And
Not
I
to
don't,
mention, you're not on the road by yourself. There, people get freaked out by trucks or
all the
lorries if you're
time.
in the UK, and so they tend to drive like idiots around
Yes.
trucks because it's always the truck's fault, right? Isn't it? So it doesn't
Yes.
matter if this person cut you
It
off.
doesn't tend to go well for the truck. I got a lot of respect out there for a lot of people who have to do a million different things and get absolutely no love from society. I moved into what has been my profession now since 2010, is working in cultural heritage, archives, and digital history, generally speaking. So currently, right, I'm a lecturer at the University of Glasgow, which for those of you who use the American naming system, I would be an associate professor. And I started that journey in 2010 at the National Archives and Records Administration.
Wow, you started there? That's
Yes.
You navigated usajobs.gov and landed yourself in a federal archives job from Get-Go Street. You're like, hey guys,
I
I was a truck driver and I thought a lot about this stuff on the road. And those are two seemingly unrelated trademark symbol. How the hell did you go from being a truck driver to?
Yeah, so my undergrad degree at the University of Maryland was in history,
Mhm.
and I started a master's degree shortly after. So I started in 2009. Sounds right. 2009 sounds right.
Mhm.
Listen, I couldn't hack the road. If I'm real, it was more than I could handle. I am not ashamed to admit that. And I went back to my employer at the University of Maryland, working for Shuttle U, and they offer free credits. You can take like 6 credits a semester or something for free at the university. And I thought, well, let me go get a master's degree. And the University of Maryland has this thing called the iSchool, the information school, and it runs these programs with the history department that is called like HILS, History and Information / Library Sciences, History and
Sure,
Lives. Yeah,
that
it doesn't
sounds
matter.
good.
Which is a whole big program, which is that people who need to work in libraries and archives should have a background in like traditional history as well. And I aimed in that direction, and that just happened to find out that they were hiring technicians at the National Archives. And I did not apply through usajobs.gov.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
There was a call, and I sent an email. It was a program that doesn't exist anymore called the Student Temporary Employment Program. So I started as a student technician, and I got to do as many hours as I wanted. And having grown up working class, I was like, so 40 hours it is.
That it.
I think that's how this works. I know
Yeah,
I've got
uh-huh.
a master's degree to study for, but
Okay.
as a technician, and I literally started in a windowless basement on a project called the Holocaust Era Assets Project. We were digitizing everything from the Holocaust that the US government had in its stores, which is a lot. So
Yeah.
my specific section was OMGUS, the occupied military government of the United States in Austria. And so we were just going through all of the files that were sort of the aftermath of the Holocaust. An archive's purpose is the preservation of historical records, artifacts, objects, that sort of thing, so that for an indefinite period of time, usually, people can access those materials. So we don't curate the collection for you. We don't put on display what you're looking for. You have to come ask for it. And then we very strictly control, in a typical archive, how you can access it. Has changed a lot in the last 15 to 20 years, just because digitization efforts, like the Holocaust Era Assets Project, which was mandated by Congress, there's a lot more accessibility. It's easier for the archive to make it available to people more consistently. And so if you think in your mind to the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones movie, spoiler alert for 1980s Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, by Steven Spielberg, there's that big warehouse, big warehouse where they put the Ark. At the end of the movie, that's an archive. That place, I would say, is like 50-50 blue collar, white collar.
Cool.
You'll have conservationists, and those people tend to have, a lot of them actually have PhDs, but they tend to have a master's in library science and a master's in chemistry. Because they have to do seriously intense chemical work to
how do
restore...
the oils on your hands affect an old parchment paper or whatever. Interesting.
Yeah, well, they'll get like an object, and that like I've seen things like, well, you could take the Constitution as a great. You have to do regular restoration work on the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and you have to do it in a room which does not like emit UV light.
Right.
Like
almost,
UV light
almost like a clean room too, right?
Yeah,
like
you got to be in a
don't
clean
want,
room. It is a clean room.
landing on it.
And
Interesting.
you need the relative humidity, if I remember correctly. And granted, it's been 13 years since I worked at NARA. If I remember correctly, humans that old need to be at like 43 to 46% humidity or something. You don't want it too dry because then the paper becomes brittle. And you don't want it wet at all because water destroys paper. Just imagine when I would go into the stacks to retrieve something, it has to be at like 14 degrees Celsius, which is like chilly for those of you not familiar. And it has to be between 40 and 50% humidity. There's just giant HVAC systems. So by the way, one of the things you want to think about, any archive has an HVAC department.
That's like one of my goals is to talk to somebody who does HVAC for either NASA clean rooms, or now that you put the archives on my radar, I think it would be so cool to talk to somebody that has to control that. That's so specific. 43% humidity and 14 degrees Celsius. What is that? That's like 45-ish, probably 50-ish.
It's around 50, I think. It's
50.
Closer to it's cool,
crisp.
baby.
It's crisp.
It's a refrigerator. It's a little bit warmer than a refrigerator. You cannot leave your egg salad out.
Darn.
Because you don't want the infestation, but also because it's going to just spoil in that room. But so I think things I did, for example, once scans. So I scanned Holocaust records into the computer using a camera.
You said scanning, so it's on like a big tripod over the.
Yes, so like there's the clear glass part of a scanner that you would put the thing down on. It's about the size of a pre-normal desk. So it's the Zoichel I was on would be 1 meter squared. So it's 4 feet
3
by
4
feet
ish
for folks out there who aren't too familiar with meters. And then it has this big camera that was overhead, and that camera was like capable of producing images that had 105,000 dots per inch. A typical desktop scanner pretty much caps out at 600 dots per inch.
Wow.
So the goal in digitizing for the National Archives and Records Administration was to recreate the tactility of the object. So you need to be able to zoom in on the object and see the grain of the paper as if you were holding it in your hand, in the event that there was some meaning locked away in that really obscure piece of paper. Like, it needed to be someone's like scritched out little doodle that if you had it in your hands would need a like you would need a microscope to see. You need to be able to do that with the digital version.
So if somebody had like I didn't mean to write that shit, or it was a signature that wasn't visible, or that, because that's all information that's still super relevant for like the context of where this document was created, who wrote it. Like maybe they were writing on top of a desk that had just had something else written and it was scratched into the paper.
Oh, and that's the big one, especially for our project, because we were working with World War II era documents, and World War II era documents were by and large, hey, here's a fun fact, were printed on onion paper because there was a lot of, there's a lot of rationing, right? And we just didn't have paper. The paper was being used for too many things. Regular old cut from trees paper. So onion paper, which comes from plant material, doesn't have to be onions, but like onion skins were the original sort of way we got onion paper, is like, think of the thinnest sheet of paper you've ever held in your hands, and it's like half the thickness. Like, it is so delicate. It's this it makes tissue paper seem robust.
Holy smokes. So you were probably seeing a lot of that kind of imprints and scratching, and oh my goodness.
And you'd have carbon copies. This is a time before we had Xerox, so it would be someone would write on the white piece of paper, but we only had the blue piece of paper, which was like it went white, yellow, pink, blue. So you needed to be able to get really fine detail to see, oh no, that's an E. You can see from the imprint, like it completes the letter and now it looks like an E. So
wow.
That was one tech job. Another tech job was just fucking removing staples.
Oh, that's what hell is like.
Rehousing.
Your punishment is you have to
rehousing
for being a sucky person. You have to go remove staples forever.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, that's almost the first job everyone has to do. You have to do processing.
You got to earn your keep. It's like, well, and like, in an apprentice situation, right? The electricians, the pipe fitters of the world, they're getting the shittiest possible job. Because all the guys that have done their apprenticeship are like, welcome.
Yeah. It's like,
this is an initiation.
Sushi restaurant. You do 5 years of the rice, man. You just make rice every day for 5 years. And then you're good enough to start working with the fish. Like,
dang. Not even. They're probably like, you get the sweet potatoes and the cucumbers. You start there.
You actually, I think you're right. I think you move on to veg after you do rice. So I just... to give you the breadth of it, though, the last thing I did, I was a team leader, and I had to train techs on the end of record lifecycle process, which is to say that we would have records that hadn't been accessed in 100 years. So we were doing old patent files, was one of the projects I was on, and we would go through and we would rehouse originals and we would remove duplicates. The rehousing would go into an airtight container, which would be sent to a cave in Kansas that's underground, that's in an old aquifer, and then we would burn everything else. I burned the equivalent of a typical local library in about 6 months. That's how many records my one team was processing. There's not enough space for it. Oh, you don't need to know about a style of like, leaf spring suspension for trucks from 1920 that we don't use anymore. So it's been 13 years, and I guarantee you it is still in a cave underneath Kansas, and no one has touched it in that 13 years. My hands are the last human hands to ever touch that piece of paper.
That's amazing.
Ever. Weird.
Wow. So you talked a little bit to me about like how it can be kind of a gross job. Like it can be kind of dirty, and it can be like, you were talking about like chemicals in the air and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about like what makes archiving kind of a dirty job?
So we've all become quite familiar with like the N20 mask since the COVID-19 outbreak. That mask and cotton gloves are standard issue PPE for a technician because you are opening a box that has potentially not been opened in 100 years. Like, every day, standard. Like, you find weird stuff all the time. So, like, they just don't, you just don't know what's going to be in a box. So
Mm.
I found dead animals in boxes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
mice will, it's cold and then they burrow their way in and then
You turn so it's nesting material. Yeah.
but there's no food anywhere. So
Nope.
they starve to death. Silverfish, huge
Whoop.
problem.
Whoop.
Run into those bad boys all the time. Okay, I used to end all my mechanic shifts, right? When I was an apprentice mechanic at the sink because you need to get that orange gunk to
Mm-hmm.
to the super soap
Yeah.
to get all of what you just had your hands up
The
in. And
brake dust and the
yeah,
old oil and the
absolutely.
gear grease and sure.
There are days where where it'd be basically the same thing at the archives. I'd have to go to the sink and like wash off whatever the funk of 40,000 years, if we want
Ugh.
to quote like Thriller, like just dust that has turned black over time. There's
Well,
going to
and
be mold. There's going to be
people don't
mildew.
understand that dust is largely composed of like human skin.
Yeah.
Like
It's just
you shake your hair or you're scratching your skin while you're standing over a piece of paper.
so when I came to the UK, I was an archivist for a educational group in London, in the south of London, called St. Dunstan's. And their main collection was about 130 years old, but the first school associated with that foundation was actually founded in like the 13th century. Part of our collection was 800 years old, and which is not something I would have encountered at Nara. Where the collection is housed is in a part of London called Catford. The oldest map of that region from the 15th century is in the St. Dunstan's collection. And in the 15th century, maps were not printed on paper. They were printed on hides.
Mm.
So I had this map, and it's 600 years old. It's entirely inscribed in Latin, but not in proper Latin, in fucked up, weird medieval Latin. Like, tried to get I went to the school to get the Latin teachers to translate it, and they're like, "Man, we don't know what this says. This
Got
is
nothing on
nonsense.
this.
This doesn't make any sense." And it had some serious, like, there's a whole corner of it that was just black and brown and like had been sort of degrading. And at first, I thought, "Oh, this is water damage that." Who knows, had God knows, 600 years old. Who
Sure.
knows? This thing used
Yeah.
to just probably be in
Sitting in
someone's,
someone's basement.
yeah, it was just in someone's basement, or it was like maybe I was on the wall at the pub, like,
Mm.
and it actually turned out to be, and this is so gross, it was technically fire damage, but because it was printed on hide, it wasn't direct fire damage, it was heat damage that had melted the remaining fat
Whoop.
in the animal. And so it actually had happened over a period of potentially as long as a century, where the heat had just slowly eroded away.
It's like over someone's fireplace or something.
Exactly. And that's why I suspect it might have been in the local pub. I think it may have been on the wall in the local pub and had
Oh,
just been
and a
too
candle underneath
close
it.
to a candle. Yeah, for too long. And that was just slowly working it away. And
Does anyone smell bacon right now?
I know,
I could
it's
go for
so
some bacon.
gross.
That's so gnarly.
Yeah, and then once I was piecing together what's happening, I was like, "Oh no, now I have to this has been housed wrong this whole time. It's been how like someone before me, because I had taken it from the borough archives where it had been for like 40 years or something. Someone before me had spotted it and thought the same thing I did, which is that it was water damage. And by the way, the only reason I knew it wasn't water damage is because I took a hygrometer and I tested it. Its humidity level should be above average, but it was like bone dry.
I'm just glad you didn't say you gave a little sniff.
No,
That's what I was worried you were going to say.
I mean, I could smell the goddamn thing when I opened the box. That was the N20 mask. Don't help you with that. I'll tell you.
Does it smell like just dead animal, like just rot?
No,
or
it just smelled like
old.
describe it. Have you had any relatives pass who were smoked?
long time ago, but yeah, that kind of.
Yeah. When you go into someone's house who's
Mm,
been a smoker
mm.
for a
Or like
couple of decades,
when you go into a particularly crusty dive bar that had eons of people smoking, you could still smell it in the like the
but
booth leather and
yeah,
the
exactly. It's
yeah,
when you sit down in the booth and you kind of kick up whatever the smell is. That's kind of what that's as close as I can get to the
old
smell.
cigarettes, bad decisions. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah. It's just rough. It was just really
Oof.
nasty. But yeah, they thought it was water damage too, and they had done the intervention that they had
Mm.
done was to put desiccant into the box that it was in, and I realized that the volume of desiccant had been decreasing because there were critters that were trying to get in there, and they were eating silica gel. They were eating these little balls of silica and then
Yeah.
dying very, very shortly
Well,
after. It's super poisonous. And I was like, oh, no, we have to do it. So it needed a completely different housing style. Once I sort of clocked what had happened to it and that it wasn't like a standard. Basically, the silica gel had done nothing but kill some number of rodents who had tried to get in the box. That was when like the gears started turning. I thought, oh, I got to put this away. This is no good.
huh,
This is no good to have in the room.
hantavirus and is there like an example of like a horror story of like we didn't used to use PPE and this person got the bubonic plague.
When I was training techs at NARA, every once in a while, some cowboy would be like, I don't gotta wear no mask. I don't know why I did that accent, you know.
Well, they're a cowboy, so
I don't gotta wear a mask. It's uncomfortable. I got glasses, you know, like blah blah blah. And I'd be like, okay. I mean, sure. Like I can't force you actually to wear the mask. So yeah, here you go. That box right there from 1921. You want to go ahead and grab that for me and just like open that bad boy up and let's take a look and then open that boy up. You know,
oof.
just gets
Give
hit
it a
in
good
the
huff.
face. And that person put a mask on the next time they came in. And goggles because to get it in your eyes as well.
So, speaking of pubs, I guess like just for listeners that aren't in the UK, pubs are a central part of society in the UK. They always have been. They're a third place is something I like to talk about. Like, yeah, you could go and have a pint, but mostly it's you're there to hang out. You're there to catch up with your friends after work or, watch a football match together or whatever. It's not necessarily this like place you go to get hammered and there's drink specials and like it is over here. And the pub, referring to the public house, it was this place that wasn't the field, it wasn't the home, it wasn't, whatever job you may have had. It was a place to gather, have food, yes, have a pint or so, and maybe exchange ideas, maybe iterate on things. Maybe a plow was giving you some trouble out in the field, and your buddies, I don't know, at the pub could puzzle through it with you. So I don't know. Do you want to talk a little bit about this is kind of like the earliest version of open source collaboration, right?
So
Except
like guild halls and pubs were the meeting places of the working classes. Of all stripes. You may be peasants meeting at a country public house, which will, by the way, if you go to any of those country pubs today, they still have rooms that you can sleep in. The Prancing Pony, as featured in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, is a super realistic pub. That's what a real goddamn pub looks like, gang. That's a pretty good, it's not perfect, but like it's pretty good, honestly. That kind of nails the energy of a pub. And if you were in a town or you were in a city, there would be a local that you would go to. Again, if you were in a guild, if you were in a skilled trade, guilds were sort of like unions, but
yeah,
the people who practice the trade, it's like if a union and the mob had a baby is kind of what a guild is like. Like everybody in the guild works in that field. So like the tanners, for example, on the south
right,
side
right.
of the Thames
Thatchers,
in London, they would have all gotten together and been like, we're going to set what prices are like. We're going to set what apprenticeships look like. We're going to control this industry. as the people who do the work in that industry. It sounds, I mean, gosh, what a world. But, sometimes it got out of hand, but most of the time it didn't. Anyway, the guild hall would be where people of a particular craft would get together. And yeah, you're right. Like they would share ideas. So, like, very interesting was the development of like the weavers. So this is a guild which still to this day has a hall on Bank Street, if I remember correctly. Because there's like the greengrocers, the weavers, the tanners, and there's like one that like sounds
Thatchers?
not
Thatching?
on Bank
Roofing?
Street, but Thatcher's would definitely be one. There's like one that has like a weird name
Mm.
that's like part of the sort of the hoity-toity.
Or something.
It is like Skullduggers or something, and you're just
Mhm.
like, what does that mean? It's like, oh, they made like the carts that carried barrels or something. It's just like a weird like, okay. So the Weavers Guild was like a site for like a lot of big change. So back in like the 1720s, there was this guy named this is in France. This wasn't in Britain. It's fine though. It's the same thing would happen in Britain. This guy named Basile Bouchon. He was a textile worker. So he worked a loom,
Hmm.
which is a skilled trade. And his father was an organ maker. So he was the son of an artisan who himself was becoming an artisan in a different field. Pretty normal.
Can we just back up and define weaving just a little bit? Because I think a lot of
Weaving.
folks might think weaving would be one type and not another, but this sounds like it encompassed like embroidery, but also the folks that made the canvas sacks for wheat or for
Yes.
hops.
Yeah, so when we think of a loom today, we tend to think of it making like reams or what are they called? Screeds or screens of cloth.
Mhm.
So like you look at a loom and you go, yeah, it makes a big old batch of raw cloth that you roll up and then you take it to the store and a proper artisan steps in and cuts the cloth. But that's industrialization. Weavers and like loom workers in the 18th century would have done, and there wouldn't be a standardization for the quality of cloth produced. So like this was a skilled job. And have you ever seen a loom like with a little shuttle rod like that runs across, like getting those strands of fiber to like intersect in a way that makes like a nice bit of cloth is itself a skill. But also, yeah, they would put patterns into cloth. Like, if you wanted to make a dress that had a floral pattern for it, the tailor doesn't add the floral pattern. The weaver adds the floral pattern. The tailor cuts the fabric and also has a skilled artisanal job of like making it into a dress or a suit or whatever. But you as the weaver are like in control of the raw materials for that. While also, you're right. I mean, making potato sacks because everyone needs potato sacks. So actually, it's a good business. So yes, it's a very different thinking about where cloth comes from and how it comes together than we would do today because it has been so industrialized and like mechanized and automated in a way that is not necessarily robbing of the creative spirit. It has deferred the creative spirit from the physical making of the cloth and put it into the designer. Like you still have someone who will be in like CAD, making the designs and everything, and then plugging it into the machine that then makes, more reams in a day than a weaver would have made in his life in the 18th century. That's just we've separated those two parts for the most part. You can still get your hands on hand woven clothing. It will cost you a lot of money, but I know that like there's a denim company, a jeans company in Japan called Momo, and their most expensive pair of jeans is made by hand on a loom and dyed in like pure indigo and
Well, even
of
up
those sort of things.
north of you in Harris Tweed, up on the Isle
Yep.
of Harris, you can go and actually
You'll get
watch
lots of tweed.
get lots
No
of
thanks.
tweed.
No
Yeah.
thanks. I'm good. I already have enough stereotypes to break. I don't need a tweed jacket.
I was gonna say, Professor, need some elbow patches.
So one of these weavers, Basile Bouchon, he's working on the looms. He's trying to make something better. His father was an organ maker. So he's trying to make a better loom, this Bouchon. And because he wants to do more of the floral patterns, he wants to put, more stuff in there. But it is a truly laborious task. And there is a question of I could make 10 potato sacks, or I could make this one floral pattern. What am I going to make more money off of? Where should I be
Yeah.
putting my energy? And he was with his father, and his father was checking an organ, church organ, and was sort of closing, as you hit the keys, the pipes close one valve, and then the air moves through into one of the, there's basically one big bag of air underneath the organ, and you're closing and opening various pipes in order for the sound to come out of different sized and length pipes. And that's what changes the pitch that comes out of it. And Bouchon just thought, I could do that, but with a loom, right?
Hmm.
How could I set up a loom so that it weaves one particular color everywhere that I open the valve and not everywhere where I don't open the valve. So it'll just be so if you start with white cloth and then I want red in it, we make it so that we open these 5 valves, and that means red comes into those 5 zones. And then if we keep moving those valves over, and then it'll start to make a line, right? Like you can make a nice curved line or something of the red as the cloth moves through. So he was just playing around with this idea and trying to make it work. And it was his assistant who came up with the concept of using a punch card.
I was just gonna say, it reminds me of the way you're describing it. Reminds me of those old player pianos with the rolls.
Yes.
And they're
Same idea.
like little holes, I guess, that pull on strings at certain times so that it plays. The
Yeah. It is literally the same idea. So the idea was to have these cards, these sort of kind of paper cards, like cardboard before cardboard quite existed, that would have holes in them, and that would correspond to the valves being open. If there's a hole, the valve is open. If it's not a hole, the valve is shut. And you could set that up along the loom, and that could then, you could map it out with a design. So you could draw a design and set the color you want, and then you can just put this card in, and basically no thread will go through unless there's a hole in it, right? And so it would go through just the holes, and then the pattern should come out on the back end. And so Bouchon's idea, he's trying to work on it for years. It's actually 20 years later that he and his assistants let's do the card, and they get the first functioning loom that's an automated loom together. And people are like, that's very interesting, gentlemen. And they're at the pub, they're at the guild hall, and they're like, okay, and what do we want to do with this? But through that network of guild halls, it passes to this guy named Jacques Vaucanson. I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. And that guy was obsessed with what are called automata toys, which is just like wind-up toys. So you crank it, and then it does a little dance.
Chatter teeth guys and all those things.
And he was actually himself also obsessed with air-powered automata toys. So the same thing, the organ concept was appearing to him, but he wanted to make toys because he was rich and he wanted to impress the king of Prussia where he lived.
Yes.
And he had studied in the Czech Republic, not a republic at that time, but he was in Bohemia, which is where the first toy factory ever was built. Fun fact about Bohemia. Bohemia actually had factories and a mini industrial revolution in the 15th century.
Wow.
And when the big industrial revolution came, they were like, yeah, and
nice of you to join us.
Yeah, welcome to the party, pal. Like, oh, the steam engine is interesting, and that's why it was a prime target for the Nazis, because there was so much developed industry. By the time we get to World War II, Hitler was like, we definitely want to be in control of this. So
Interesting.
fun stories. This is my podcast, by the way. We're talking
Yes.
about
Yes.
automata toys in the 17th and 18th century, and then Hitler shows up.
I was gonna say, oh wait, am I supposed to drink now because Hitler showed up? Like,
It's like that rule. It's not rule 42. I think that's the rule that like everything has porn or something on the internet, but it's one of those like the argument will inevitably end in Hitler, and that's when you know the argument is over. That's my podcast, but it's the fun version. Yeah. So Jacques was out studying these toys. He comes back home and he learns through these Guildhall conversations about the French boys who have cracked this loom thing, and he goes, that's really interesting. I will get the King of Prussia interested in this concept, and I will make a name for myself for an automated loom, which was issued in Prussia. He gets the first patent for it from the King of Prussia, and he tinkers with it and toys with it from the 1750s. But then eventually it's Joseph Marie Jacquard in 1804 who learns from him. So we're going from master comes up with the idea, apprentice comes up with the execution of the idea. Then it passes to a rich guy who's toying with making it work and getting the system to be scalable, but it's his apprentice who then takes it and packages it into something that is sellable to other people. Because the Jacquard loom is the first wide-scale industrial loom. From the early 19th century, from about 1800, we see an explosion of the availability of clothing with patterns on it. Because Jacquard patents a new design that makes it a really simple system, and one specifically that can be hooked up to a steam engine. So now the machine can run 24 hours a day. All you have to do is keep the fires burning and the water in the system, and that will just run this machine, and it will spit out the pattern that you plug into it with the punch cards 24 hours a day, and you will make that. And then all you have to do
sounding familiar.
Yeah, it sounds real familiar. All you have to do is change the cards out if you want to change the pattern, right?
Sure.
Or you can have different looms making different patterns, and it's fine.
Different inputs for different outputs, if you will.
Exactly. Different. So we've got an input output. We're going to call it an I/O system running here.
Right.
And this actually ends up inspiring Ada Lovelace. And for those people who don't know Ada Lovelace is, she's the first computer programmer. This is the person that we think of as the first computer programmer because in 1837, she wrote the first program for a machine. The analytical engine, which was invented by Charles Babbage, was designed to do mathematical equations. And it could do one equation really well, but it was a difficult equation to do. And it was Ada Lovelace who then went back to the Jacquard style system and said, oh, actually, if we change these 3 or 4 parts on the analytical engine, we can get a on, off, null, or complete, as she would refer to it, system, and we can change the equations that this engine can actually solve. Instead of solving this one equation, it can solve this family of equations. It can compute a series of equations using either an on or off system, which is, for those of you who are not ahead of the curve on this one, binary code.
Right. Ones and zeros.
So binary code, which comes to be how we make this, what we're doing right now,
Right. Yeah.
all distills down to binary code, started with the son of an organ maker who worked on a loom, just trying to make the loom work better, more efficiently than could do on his own, because he knew from personal experience the labor involved in making elaborate patterns. And if it weren't for the guild hall system and what we call the journeyman system, which is a master takes on an apprentice, and then that apprentice, once they've reached a certain skill level, leaves, goes on a journey, and takes their skill somewhere else where then they become a master and then they tell the next person. If it weren't for that network through the guild hall public house system, we wouldn't have gotten there. Like Ada Lovelace would not have had the concept already in hand to come up with the first computer program. And then she would not go on to inspire Alan Turing, who ends up cracking the Enigma machine in World War II
Mm.
and makes what we think of as the first programmable computer that inspired everything we know as computers today.
So crazy. Again, this is every episode of Andrew's show, Seemingly Unrelated. So if you just got taken for a ride there, you should check out that show. Talking about the loom and being steam powered and needing to keep water to keep it cool. And I'm like, these are all the things that we're doing now for these supercomputers and these data centers, right? Even talking about archives, that oral tradition of passing down, like, this is how you do this is how you thatch a roof, this is how you make a potato sack, this is how you whatever. And then on to written schematics and writing down, like, how machines work, how things should be cared for, maintained. Like, all of those things center around working people who have their hands in these machines and doing the work, talking to one another and working through
Absolutely.
problems. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, just shooting the shit in the pub, but wow.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's involved a mix of people collaborating across centuries in this case. Like, information moves much faster now, so these problems don't take 150 years to crack. But it is from artisan and apprentice to a wealthy traveler trying to influence a king, back to an artisan, but then on to, Ada Lovelace, like lady, like she was a
Mm.
baron's wife, moving on to her working with Charles Babbage. It needed that blend of people who can hold on to the problem in their hands and see what they need to solve because they work on it. And also the influence of the people who have the time, which we would have in the 19th century called leisure time for Ada, but we wouldn't think of it now. We would just think of it as creative work, right? She's a
Sure,
problem
sure.
solver who have that time to think about the problems as well, to muddle over it and to do the research and to know what a Jacquard loom is and to know what an analytical engine is, because she didn't know Charles Babbage. She was living in England. He was living in France. She just was reading up about his analytical engine and happened to have read up about what Jacquard had patented. And Jacquard himself, he didn't in his patent say, I invented this from whole cloth, right? Like he said, this is my improvement upon the existing automated systems that would work with engines that we're starting to see poking around here and there now. Like it's adaptable for that system. But for Ada, she didn't know anything about the two illiterate French boys who came up with this,
Yeah,
100
just to
years
make their
before.
lives easier.
She only knows about what was written down, right? Which does bring us back to the archives connection there, which was the patent. And I think this really feeds into a narrative we have about progress and invention. There are these Jacquards, these geniuses who come up with an invention, or there are these Ada Lovelaces who come up with these inventions, and then they change the world, right? Like the steam powered loom changed the world. That's true. The steam powered loom changed the world. That's an undeniable fact. Like, for most people, you had one outfit, full stop. Like, your whole life, like you would mend it until you died. But when we're talking about the early 19th century, you'd have 3 outfits maybe that you'd rotate through, and every couple years, you might get some socks at Christmas or a pair of shoes if someone had some money for the cobbler or whatever. But now, as we get through by the 1820s, actually a lot of people in Europe and in the United States they're changing their clothes 2-3 times a week. Maybe even getting up to, if you got a little bit of money, every day you're changing your clothes. Something we take for granted now.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different world, right?
Yeah.
200 years ago. It is attributed to people like Jacquard only because we can't know about the other guy if we don't have any fucking evidence he existed. The
Mm-hmm.
only reason we found out about it was through the journals of Jacquard's, his boss, Vaucanson, which were kept in a private collection and then eventually made their way into, and now researchers can find it. And then they go, oh my God, this assistant, he met the journeyman who had been the apprentice and who told him about the punch card thing. And he got the names of both of those guys. And like, we only then would go look up and see this original, let me make sure I get his name correctly. I don't want to mess up his name because he's so important to history. This Bouchon, we then go look up the local records where he's from and see that his father was registered as an organ maker in the census. Like, oh my God, this is where the pieces start to like come together. It's a much more complicated story anytime an invention is made.
Mm.
When Edison patented the light bulb, there were, I think, 6 other patents for the light bulb within a 6-week window of
Wow.
his filing it around the world, because it was, people experimenting with electricity, and it was people experimenting with vacuums, and it was people experimenting with glass, and it was people experimenting with materials all around the world who just happened to inform these 5 dudes, all of them dudes, around the world at the same time. None of their ideas were wholly their own.
It's kind of a bummer now to think about how we've lost that, especially in the States. First of all, it's not really encouraged for the educated folk to hang out with people that haven't gone to school. It's not that it's discouraged, it's just that there's no place like a pub for it to happen on a regular basis. Like, maybe you could argue like football games or something. I don't know, where there a lot of people have common interests that way, but it certainly makes it harder. And I know that it's something that I talk about on the show a lot with folks that are my age, and as you can attest, it was like shoved down our throats as millennials that we had to go to college or there was just no future for us. And even if trade school was on the radar, it was very much looked down at. And so I don't know, what do you think is the answer? How do we make more places like a pub, or more third places, or even just find more ways to get these groups to mix?
I think if we look to your precious NASA and we think about the Mercury and Apollo program,
Hmm.
right? The big boys, the ones that changed the world, right? And we think about the room, the not the control center, but like the room before the mission's launch, where there's just the sea of people. We've got the one black woman who's doing all the math. She's a computer. There's a whole movie about it. But it's got a load of guys from a wide range of backgrounds because their mission was one which was of national importance, both Mercury and Apollo. They were branded as these very significant and important ways forward. And so you had to draw from the nation. And also, it was a time when there hadn't been this shift into a post-industrial economy. The US has been a post-industrial economy mostly since the 1970s. And that's caused a lot of friction because that means the availability of employment for people who don't have a advanced degree, who don't engage in tertiary education, has shrunk and has become more and more isolated and has paid less and less as the competition was globalized. And so what's happened is that the working classes have shrunk to the working class. Don't think we have working classes anymore in the US necessarily. And they have fewer and fewer resources available to them, which creates a host of problems.
Mhm.
Because of the messaging, because of the branding, because things like Apollo and Mercury were popular, and it seems like the people who got celebrated were the ones in the control room or in the rocket itself, and those are all really well-educated people. That pulls apart. So we have this degradation of the working class that pulls them away. They just don't have the fucking time. They don't have the time or the money to engage with anyone from the middle class. And the middle class has been so important to driving the consumer culture
Right.
that powers to a certain extent, the global economy, but certainly the US economy.
The automobile, buy the house, buy the stuff to fill the house with, buy you have to have the Christmas blowout and you have to all these things, buy, buy, buy.
hmm Black Friday, right?
Keeping up with the
It's a
Joneses, that was a thing, like making sure that your house looked just as nice as next door. And if their kids had new clothes on the first day of school, your kids had to have new clothes on the first day of school. This pressure, just to just to look not lower class, appear as though you had achieved a certain level,
appears if you are never in want.
not working 2 jobs, not working.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
always satisfied is essential to the consumer economy. So that puts those people increasingly, they need to identify with what they are consuming. So for those of us who have too many degrees, in all honesty, I don't know if I needed this many, but like the things that I am exposed to are, literally a couple days ago, my spouse and I, who also they're getting their PhD, but they did a philosophy undergrad and then a nursing master's degree. We were talking about, what were we doing? We are doing like dialectical monist, like Neoplatonism. Like we were in this weird, deep philosophical discussion because our consumption of knowledge is part of like the educational system. It needs us to consume the knowledge so that we
Mm,
keep paying tuition, so that we can keep the boat afloat.
mm,
And like it just becomes weird and obscure because you have to keep digging deeper and deeper to keep the consumption up, don't you? Which only
mm.
then pulls us further away, not up. I don't want it to seem like, the working class is being dragged down and the middle class being
No.
dragged up. They're just being dragged apart from one another.
And
One
deeper
just
into this, like, tunnel vision rabbit hole, I'd say
Yeah,
academia can become.
yeah. One
Yeah.
deeper into exhaustion and the other deeper into obscurity. That's
Ooh.
what's really been happening in those spaces.
Mm.
And without a recognition that each other has a value first as a person, every person has
And a
value.
really easy hotbed for the proliferation of resentment too.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
when the one group is working their asses off just to put dinner on the table and to maybe have a few of those things that we're all supposed to have to look like we've made it or that we're satisfied, as you said before. It's very easy to look at someone who chooses to be in a library all day. Like, well, what do you like? I hear that argument a lot, especially online when I'm kind of socially listening, if you will, in on the topics being discussed online in different forums. Like, well, I work for a living. I don't have time to sit around and debate this stuff or learn about the stuff or quote unquote do your own research. And it's true, there's an aspect of it that it's like, yeah, they don't have time because they do have to work and they are keeping the country, afloat and running. And the academics, it's very easy for them to then, and this is all also just anecdotal, what I've observed as a kind of someone who has a foot in both worlds, one could argue, like it's very hard for them to see out of that rabbit hole that they've put themselves in the stacks, if you will. Like, what do you mean everybody doesn't care about this one thing that I've
Right.
dedicated my whole life to? Like, it's very hard for scientists and academics to take themselves out of that I guess the rabbit hole that they've dug themselves into, trying in earnest to improve something, to make life better, to
Yes.
change the world even. So I think it's just really easy to understand how it's not just a distance issue, there's resentment now between the two groups. And that's, in all honesty, why one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, because I think we do have a lot more in common than we realize. And I think, to your point about being a truck driver and being a mechanic and doing all these things, there's a lot of merit to the folks that have the academics, have the letters behind their names, that also have done blue collar work or come from working class families. So I don't know, maybe you should try to go work at the mall on the weekends or something, so that you're in
Yeah.
contact with everyday people.
For me, I think it's important for my practice as an educator to keep in touch with that element of it, to share my experience, because keeping in touch with that reality is important for me and my practice, for sure. Inside of a given department, is there merit to having some member of staff be a third generation academic, or to come from money and to have only done academia? Yeah, probably, because they've probably had so much more time to dig deeper into an academic.
Bigger questions, and
Yeah,
sure,
there's something
sure,
about the academic practice that I guarantee they're going to know more about. But one of the big issues we actually have is that most of academia is those people. And it's getting worse. There's fewer and fewer people who come from working class backgrounds in academic positions. That's not unique to anywhere in particular. It's super commonplace around the world. That's going to be a real problem for those particular universities. So it's good to have, in my estimation, a diversity of inputs. Like I said, we wouldn't have the computer if we didn't have both some working class lads who were in the
mm,
middle of it and some, highfalutin intellectuals who could think deep on the problem. It was the experience and intellect of a wide range of people and government involvement, action, and support that defeated the Nazis the first time. So if you want to defeat the Nazis again, gang, you're gonna have to share a beer with someone that you're not familiar with.
right?
And when they say something wild, first things first, is what they said wild to you, or is it
Mm,
wild? Like, did they
mm,
say all of those types of people need to leave? That's wild. That's a person who needs to maybe be educated. But if they said something that really took you by surprise, like, I don't know, my daddy used to beat me, that doesn't seem like so bad a thing. You sort of go, boy, meet that person where they are, which
right.
is traumatized, but meet that
Yeah.
person where they are, and don't think that that puts up some sort of impassable barrier between you and them. And the same thing goes for, if you don't know what someone said, ask. I assure you.
Be curious.
Yeah,
Just,
just ask, because
yep.
don't worry, they'll tell you.
Like, don't go into a conversation assuming that they're gonna say something out of pocket,
Mm-hmm.
either. Like, go into the conversation because they're wearing a shirt of the same sports team that you like, or maybe it's a rival sports team, or maybe they're drinking the beer that you like, or whatever it is. Like, I think the light bulbs are starting to flicker on right now, and there's this sense of like, well, I can't forgive those people because they XYZ and voted this way and da da da. And it's like, well, then you're not helping.
Mm.
And I think it's super valid to say I'm hurt too much by this, and I've had to live my life scared because of this. And if you can't be the person that comes to the table to hang out with these folks, then that's okay. That's okay. That's super valid. You don't need to compromise your own boundaries and your own mental health.
Absolutely.
But like the old saying goes, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything, because folks like me, folks that do have the patience, we're doing the work, and we can't have that tribal polarizing exterior anymore. That there's no time for that. We got to talk to each other. We got to give each other some grace.
If I just think my sort of final thought on it is, I'm just saying, folks, like, you didn't do anything by yourself ever. So, like, keep that in mind. The tribes that you're in, are they building walls? Are they building bridges? If you're in a group of people building barriers, supporting that we must do this alone mentality,
Mm,
that is just dangerous. And it's not You're not going to like it. You don't really want it. It causes a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. Yeah, having that open hand approach, that bridge building mentality, while again, as you said, maintaining the boundaries.
Sure.
Right? Don't
Yeah.
take your armor completely off so that you get stabbed in the chest, but like, maybe
Drawbridge in there. Maybe
yeah,
a little
I was
gate.
say maybe you don't need the gloves. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to be able to shake a hand. Maybe you can't do that with the
Sure.
metal gloves on.
Right.
That kind of thinking it's going to help in our workplaces. It's going to help our science do better. It's going to help our politics, I think, get better. It's going to just sort of push the needle in the right direction. Bridging that gap that has been created between the middle and the working class is one way to combat that and stop pushing away, because one person's hands are covered in grease and the other person's hands are silky soft from working on a computer all day.
That's right.
It's fine. You both still clocked an 8-hour day. Like, kudos to you. You made it.
I'm so glad that you were able to come on to the show today and provide us some like real context. This very, very human struggle that has happened over and over and over again in history, and give us some proof that it can get better too. And I think that podcasts like mine, podcasts like yours, which brings to light these historical moments of real human collaboration and, problem solving, they're hopefully the first steps. And maybe this is our third place. Maybe this is our digital third place, a place where we can all go and hang out. You don't have to tell your buddies you're listening to a history or a science podcast, right?
Yeah. We're just having the hangout time.
We're just hanging out, man. We're just hanging out. Well, I'm super glad that you were able to come on by and be on the show. And yeah, where can the people find you?
Gang, if you want to find out about how the reason that Hello Kitty is a global phenomenon is because one of its artists was trying to stop teenage girls from being sold into sex trafficking, you can find out by listening to Seemingly Unrelated. It's a podcast. It's available everywhere. Wherever you're listening to this show right now, just go to the search bar, put Seemingly Unrelated. We've got a yellow logo. It'll pop up immediately. So subscribe there. Check those things out. You can also get us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, everywhere at Seemingly Unrelated Pod, or just go to seeminglyunrelatedpod.com, where there's links to literally everything. And like I said, fortnightly episodes. So plenty of content to enjoy.
Shout out to Naomi. She keeps that train on the rails. But yeah, it's great. And I'm excited that I was just on an episode of yours.
November 25th episode. Amy's there. If you like more Amy, you can get more Amy.
Thank you so much. This has been super fun.
Thank you, Amy. This was a lot of fun. I love chatting make sure you bleep this out, 2.5 hours about
I know.
history of the history of the working class, but also being an archivist, a job that nobody knows shit about.
Hell yeah. Now they're gonna know.
Bye,
now they're gonna know. Bye-bye, everybody. Well, gang, that's a wrap on the first season of Blue Collar White Coat. I hope you enjoyed this special crossover with Seemingly Unrelated host Andrew Johnstone. He has a real gift for pulling you into history lessons without you even realizing it. And if you learned something new today, head over to our YouTube channel and leave a comment on this episode. I'd really love to hear what stuck with you. You can also find links to Seemingly Unrelated, including the show's YouTube channel, in the show notes for today. By listening, you're already doing us a huge favor, but if you want to support Blue Collar White Coat, you can find us at Blue Collar White Coat Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. We're also on LinkedIn now, so check us out there by searching for Blue Collar White Coat. If you're following us or subscribed on any of those already, help us out by hitting repost on our content or sharing the show with a friend. I feel like a lot of shows ask you to do this, but they don't really give you the why. So as a professional communications person and a former social media manager, I can tell you reposting is one of the biggest ways to get content in front of new eyes and ears. So thank you if you're already doing it, and consider doing it if you're not. Season 2 drops in late March, and we'll dig even deeper into the skilled, blue-collar, and often uncelebrated work that powers science, technology, and engineering. We'll be bringing you conversations with more of a roundtable feel, so we'll have multiple guests on an episode that could be anyone from a Dungeness crab fisherman to a hairstylist, to maybe even an influencer or two. I'm working on it, guys. So if you have ideas for guests or even feedback on season 1, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at bluecollarwhitecoatpod@gmail.com. I know I've said it a lot already, but it has been such a delight learning this crazy craft of podcasting and having you all come along for the ride with me. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks mostly in pajamas, filled with cheese, and unsure about what day it is. So please, get some rest over the holidays. And until next season, keep your safety glasses on and your mind open. Blue Collar White Coat is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Amy Weldon. Social media content support comes from Kira Gower. Historical research support and fact-checking for this episode were provided by Andrew Johnstone, our guest and host of Seemingly Unrelated.